The golden hour. Those few precious minutes that photographers love. When the sun rests low near the horizon, the shadows are soft, and the light is literally golden. Everything seems more relaxed. Let's talk about capturing that look and that feeling in a portrait. Not just a traditional portrait, though. Let's talk about doing something a little more interesting. I did a photo shoot the other day on the top of a mountain to help me illustrate my point. My photo shoot had two things that I want to talk about. One, the golden hour. We'll talk about how I capture the look and feel of it. And then two, shaking things up a bit, stepping outside of that traditional portrait box. Some people might call it a fashion editorial look or maybe a little commercial. It's like it's mixing together portrait, snapshot, and magazine ad. So my number one rule when working with nature is to work with nature and not against it. What I mean by that is to let nature do its thing and work with what you have right in front of you. How? Let me show you some examples. Know where your light is coming from and move and frame your shots around it. This is different from studio shooting, like behind me, right? Where you have the subject stand in the center of the backdrop and you move your lights around him or her. You can't move the sun though. Instead, change your position or your subject's position, or both. Like if you end up with something like this, where your subject is in silhouette, shift your position. Use those feet. Now there's a lot of light on my face in this one, but what if I want something in between, where I have that halo effect around me, but I'm not completely dark? Well, rather than turning completely around so that the subject is facing the sun, try something else, maybe like this. So there's a lot of complex shadow going on here. The wind is whipping my hair around and creating a shadowy grid of sorts on my face, but I find that interesting, and I like how some of the sunlight managed to get through and glint off my eye. But maybe this is too much for you. Something softer could be like this. Part of my face is in shadow, but half of it is illuminated. Or maybe something like this, where my face isn't directly being lit up by the sun. Rather, I'm getting that cool halo effect off my hair and really that entire side of my body. You're still capturing the romantic look and feel of the golden hour. I'll come back to this photo in a minute, but first. Now, I've suggested that you forego the flash, but you could use fill flash and try to balance out the lighting if you're in a silhouette situation or if there's just more shadow than you prefer. But unless you do it really well, maybe gel your flash, the flash's color temperature isn't going to be right. Also, consider that you're taking some of the interest away when you do that. I feel like sometimes people are so busy making sure that everything is completely lit up that the colors look off, and a lot of times the lighting ends up being pretty flat over the image. And then the photo doesn't have the same romance and the golden light that you have naturally at that time of day. And plus, you don't have a lot of time to be messing around with your flash or even a reflector. You've only got a small period of time every day where the light looks like that. So let me go back to this photo for a moment and talk about a couple of other things. First, you can see some lens flare in the left corner. Don't freak out. I promise it's okay. If you like it there, it's okay. I don't want it in all of my photos, but I like it here. Allowing some of that stuff into your work creates a feeling to me. Like, as the viewer, I automatically want to squint looking at the photo because I can almost feel the burn of the sun in my eyes. Back here though, the other thing I wanted to mention is framing your shot. I've got a lot of environment here. It was a beautiful landscape. I don't feel like a portrait or even a photo for a model's portfolio necessarily needs to be tightly cropped to the subject. This type of photo is telling a story. It's more in that fashion editorial or ad campaign style. I'm also moving in this image. Creating motion in an image by actually having your subject move around can create a more interesting photo. And if you're talking about a portrait, it can even tell the viewer something about the subject. Like maybe you have a kid running towards you because that's how that kid is in real life. Movement tends to relax your subject too, especially if you're working with someone who isn't used to having their photo taken. Having them move around a bit will almost certainly make them forget that they're supposed to be nervous and stiff. Okay, one more thing. What happens when the sun is sinking lower and lower and all of a sudden it's not so much the golden hour anymore? But maybe you want to take some more photos. That's okay. You don't have to stop right as the light starts to cool down. The ambient light will still be nice and diffused. You may need to change your white balance or increase your ISO sensitivity. But isn't that why everybody claims that they want a full frame sensor or a new DSLR? Because they go up to ISO 1 bazillion? Use it. So don't overcomplicate things. Don't rush to fill flash or to monkey with a reflector. Don't gasp if you end up with some lens flare or some extra shadow on your subject's face. Embrace what the eye actually sees and maybe get a little creative. Think about how you can use what you have in front of you to make an interesting photo. Show off your location with wider crops maybe. You could end up with something less than traditional, but probably unique. Maybe it wouldn't work for everybody all of the time. There are certainly people who want that standard in-studio family portrait, but this could certainly work for models, for high school senior portraits, for engagement sessions or pregnancy photos, kids, anytime you want that relaxed and kind of romantic look. I have one of the images from my shoot up on snapchick.com for everyone to take a look at, along with some camera settings that were used. There's a link to it in the description of this video. For my VIPs, I put together an entire gallery of images, 24 of them actually, that you'll find there. And I also talked in depth about the shoot. Everything from inspiration to wardrobe choices to more information on the camera settings in this week's VIP show. If you haven't seen it already, follow the link that's in the description of this video, and I've added a link to the show with the gallery.